y'all have not even seen all of the layers of Kamala Devi Harris. You just have.
That's right.
She is so fun and so brilliant. I think I tell these people to go to hell. Let her make her decision in her own time. Right. How many times did Joe Biden run for president? Like, shut up.
Hey y'all, it's Brittney. So this past Sunday, August 9th, 2026, it marked 12 years since the murder of Michael Brown Jr. Michael was killed by Ferguson police officer Darren Wilson, who was never indicted or even remotely held accountable for taking Mike's life. Mike was just a young man, 18 years old, a child, had just graduated from high school, and I remember the day that I watched his mother, Leslie McSpadden, cry out about just how hard she and Mike's family and Mike's father had worked to get him across that stage and into his future. I also remember the feeling as somebody who had worked in education for many years prior, including in my hometown of St. Louis, and trained teachers that taught at the very high school where Mike Brown attended. I remember the deep, deep heartbreak and the punch to the gut in realizing that diploma that Mike finally got was not bulletproof. I felt angry, I felt frustrated, I felt complicit. My first day in protest during the Ferguson uprising was August 9th. That afternoon, I went from Kansas City, where I was, back home to St. Louis, and I found myself standing in front of the Ferguson Police Department, not knowing exactly what to do, but knowing that I had to bear witness. And what we've all borne witness to over the last 12 years has been nothing short of earth-shaking. We've seen people who we were told were unelectable become elected. Shout out to Cori Bush. We've seen protests and power move from Ferguson to Palestine and back in between. We've seen people find connection globally who we were told would always be strangers and enemies. In that 12 years, we saw people write the books and sing the songs and make the films that prepared us for 2020 and the summer of our discontent. A lot of folks may not know me from the Ferguson uprising. That was 12 years ago. Some of you may not even remember what happened over those 400 plus days, which makes the Ferguson uprising the longest sustained direct action campaign in this country's history, longer than the Montgomery bus boycott. There's a forgetfulness that we're all dealing with in this social media age when AI is pushing us further, faster away from those things that we need to remember. But I hope you remember this, that whether you know me from the Ferguson uprising, whether you know Kayla Reed from the Ferguson uprising, no matter whose name you know or don't know, never, ever forget the name Mike Brown. People argue all the time about who founded this modern day movement for racial justice. And as far as I'm concerned, Mike Brown did. Sandra Bland did. Trayvon Martin did. Tamir Rice did. All of those who are fallen, whose names we can never forget, those are the founders of this movement. And for them, we have to remain undistracted. On the show today, we have Native Land co-host and commentator Angela Rye, as well as our group chat bestie, Dr. Brittany Cooper, joining us once again for Untrending News. We'll be right back. Now that we just went through some revealing primaries and we're under 3 months away from the midterms, I wanted to call up one of the people that I like talking elections with the most, my sis, your sis, Angela Rye. She knows politics. She was executive director and general counsel to the Congressional Black Caucus during the 112th Congress, where she helped shape the caucus's legislative and political strategy from the inside, which means when she talks about the halls of power, she's not just speculating. She knows what she's talking about. She's telling you what she's seen in the room, and since then, she's built Impact Strategies, a firm that influences policy and connects civil rights organizations with resource partners. She also founded State of the People, a coalition that took her on a multi-city tour through communities the electoral map often tends to forget. And you may know her as the co-host of the Native Land Pod. She's a lawyer, a strategist, one of the machetes, and one of the sharpest read-the-room voices left in politics today. My girl, Angela Rye, welcome to Undistracted.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Britt. It's so good to be with you, as always.
So listen, we ask everybody before we get started, how are you doing today in 3 words?
Ooh, carrying a lot.
Carrying a lot
Yeah.
is real. And we know you carry a lot for a whole lot of people. So we appreciate you making the time because you don't just talk about it, you are about it. So let's start big picture. I want your opinion. We just went through this series of primaries. There were some losses that hit really hard. We talked about our friend Cori Bush losing her second bid to take back her House seat. But there were a lot of encouraging victories. We saw a higher Democratic turnout in primaries than in Republican primaries. People are absolutely motivated. There are some important progressive candidates that won, like Dr. Abdul in Michigan, Justin Pearson in Tennessee. Can you put in perspective for our community here at Undistracted what you think is what's the best case, the realistic case, for what's going to happen in November? Best case and realistic.
Well, let me start with worst case. I know that wasn't part of the question, but let's just start there so we just get it out the way.
Uh-huh.
We are living under a fascist regime. And I think that we say that a lot, but we don't always understand the signs. There's someone who is absolutely fascinated with authoritarian leaders, and to that end has joked about and even put on a hat that says Trump 2028. He has done the work, laid the groundwork
Yeah.
of trying to federalize elections. We all know they're state run. There was a time, Britt, when we as Black folks used to say, well, at least we got the feds. The feds will come in and make sure that the states are cooperating
Right.
and protecting our civil and human rights. Now we like, please don't go to the feds. What is the states talking about? We didn't used to be states' rights people. Now we like states' rights. Funny how the tables turn.
I'd be so glad I live in Maryland, child. Yeah.
Right. Shout out to Wes and Don. And so the thing that
Yeah.
I would say is that we could creep up on elections that have ICE officers outside of polling locations, people ready to, criminalize the good work that so many of our friends who do voting rights work are doing. The election protection hotline may reach an all-time high for the calls they receive. Now, hopefully that doesn't happen in the spirit of John Lewis, but I think that we would be foolish not to prepare as if it would happen. So just as a normal call to action, we do that on our show all the time. I would just say for every lawyer that has any inkling of respect for democracy and protecting the rights our ancestors fought for, volunteer as poll watchers, as election protection hotline answerers, as text responder, whatever you can do, make sure that you are ready to do that thing. And then I'll say on the mid-level. On the mid-level, Democrats who are in their right minds take over and win the House.
That's an important caveat. The Democrats who are in their right minds. We have to make that caveat, but keep going.
Yes, we do. And then perhaps the Senate. Because what that does is, as we all know and are feeling the weight of a hemorrhage, it will stop the hemorrhage. It won't do much more than that. And I also think it is so important we're telling people the truth about that. Because I think people are being told, like, oh, go to the midterms, you vote in the midterms, everything gonna change. It's gonna be great. This fool is still gonna be in office for 2 more years, at least. So let's just level set that once again, it is a harm reduction strategy to just win, for the Democrats to just win the midterm elections and become the majority in the House and the Senate. And the highest and best possible outcome that I could see, they take over the House and the Senate, and people find courage, nuts, and ovaries, and they impeach and remove this bastard. That would be...
Come on. We can hope and pray.
I mean, that's all I got. And then, maybe we win some other gubernatorial races, of course. And that maybe it's a landslide, election where people were like, oh, they got a 2/3 majority. And then there's some constitutional amendments and stuff that could happen. I don't know. It still would take 3/4 to ratify. But alas, here we are. And then maybe we could also hold off some Supreme Court seats, because if he's still in office,
wouldn't that be nice?
and these people start talking about retiring or resigning.
But what you're talking about when it comes to the hopeful outcome, even the realistic outcome, has to do with this shift to the left that we're seeing from Americans, not just people who voted MAGA and are now regretting it, but people who are like, I want more from this government and I need to see progress and promises kept. So there's a study that we've both looked at going around from our friends at the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation that I know caught both of our attention. There's a lot in there, but I want to get your read on it. So it's tracking Black women on a lot of things, but here's what I find interesting. There's information that shows that a growing group of Black women are identifying as progressives, now 35%, especially younger women, women who have higher education levels, and that of that 35% of Black women that identify as progressives, that a number of them identify as democratic socialists. Now, the internet has been arguing about democratic socialists versus liberals the entire time, but that number has increased since the 2024 election when Black women identified as progressives about a quarter of the time. We obviously just watched Janice Lewis George win the Democratic mayoral primary in DC, running explicitly as a democratic socialist with support from the Working Families Party. People like Zoran, I mean, they're talking about him like he's Superman. I'm just curious, like, if Black women are the canary in the coal mine, and we're often the first indicator of where the electorate is actually moving, do you think that this is an indication of where the public is shifting such that we could see some of those outcomes you're talking about in the midterms?
You want to know the truth?
Mm-hmm.
Black people have always been progressive. We can look at the politics of Fannie Lou Hamer, of Julian Bond, of John
Jesse
Lewis.
Jackson.
I'm getting there. You know, I mean, his whole
Mm-hmm.
1984 platform is Bernie Sanders' platform, but make it whitewash
That's
it,
right.
you know? So I just think
Mhm.
like it's ridiculous. I shouldn't say it's ridiculous. It is hard for me to hear these conversations about there's a shift to progressivism when I think that the real calculation has been how should our politics look right now for us to
Yeah.
survive?
Yeah.
And I think if you're in survival mode, you make concessions and exceptions and negotiate what are the things that you're
Mhm.
willing to lay aside to make
Mhm.
it. And so what I think
Mhm.
you're really seeing is a shift towards we deserve more than just to survive.
Mhm.
We deserve for our politics and our political leaders and our elected officials to see us and serve us and meet our needs and demands. And so
Yeah.
that is being packaged differently. And what I want to commend these candidates for is they're also taking bolder stances. They are meeting
Mhm.
the constituents where they are. It's
That's right.
not they're dragging the constituents over to where they are. It's like, oh, what do you actually need? And I'll tell you, Britt, I had this really interesting but frustrating conversation with a member of Congress who shall remain nameless because I love him to death. But we were in Tunica this past weekend, and I
Mhm.
was telling him that while we were, on the State of the People tour, power tour, we kept hearing from people that, and it was hard for me because, my whole professional adult life has been in politics, but they kept saying, no matter who I vote for or when I vote, my
Yeah.
circumstances don't change.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but why? We did this and this. What about this? And people are saying, I hear what you're saying, but I haven't felt that
Mhm.
impact personally. It's not a material difference. So maybe there's a slight shift. Things are a little bit better for a little while, and then there's a dip off. And even
Mhm.
that roller coaster is emotionally, mentally, and
Yeah.
economically unsettling for people.
That's
So when I
right.
was explaining this to this member, he said, but when Joe Biden was in office, a family of four got $5,000. And I was like, but what if they're not a family of four? And he was like, well,
Mhm.
if they were one, they got $1,000. I said, what if they were incarcerated when the $1,000 came? Right? Like there are these other caveats that
Yeah.
we're not always thinking through. And what if $1,000 only helps you make it another month?
Mhm.
If I'm honest, for me, too often that's a day and a half. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like,
Yeah.
help me,
Yeah.
Jesus. But I'm like, you gotta like really think about where people are and what they need. And it's so
That's
hard.
right.
I can't imagine because I know for me it's hard to hear. For someone who's
Mhm.
spent their life in public service and you're doing the best you can, and it's not enough to meet the needs of your people or constituents who are saying, this still isn't sufficient for me, he couldn't hear it. And I was like, you're trying to assign a macro level answer to a micro level condition. And sometimes those things don't meld. We have to be real about that. And what we keep doing with Black folks is saying, just wait till November. Wait till we take back the majority. Wait till. And it's like, no. Walk out.
What if I can't make it to November, baby?
Right. So we're trying to make it day to day. But when we get to November, number one, y'all don't take over in November. It's January. Let's start there. So you want them to get to November, give you another 2 months, and then what is your plan and your strategy for when you become the majority? And what does that mean for individual A or B or C? If they're in Mississippi or Michigan, what does that mean? And how does their material condition change? Those are tough conversations, but we've got to have them. Or the other statistic or the other data point that you know about from the Black Women's Roundtable study is people will drop off. They will disengage.
They will.
I'm just saying.
They will. Even the most reliable blocks will disengage, because you can't blame people for disengaging in a system that keeps breaking its promises.
Yeah.
And I think what you identify is bigger than any label, right? Because perhaps Black women haven't always called ourselves progressive, but we've certainly held progressive ideals, progressive beliefs. And these labels, I think, frankly, are tripping people up, right?
Yeah,
so
I agree,
I'm thinking about Zoran and Janice, who identify as Democratic Socialists. They're also supported by the Working Families Party. Shout out to our friend Mo Mitchell, who is building a party for working class people, right? And they're like, we're not Democrats, we're not Republicans, we're not Democratic Socialists. We're not trying to recruit you to a political ideology. We are trying to make sure that there is space for working class people to be heard and elect the people who will serve them. So that's one set of labels or non-labels. And then I think about Baltimore Mayor Brandon Scott, right? Who you can like pop up on Twitter, on Threads, and say, hey, it's a pothole on my street, and it will get filled in a day, right? He doesn't identify as a Democratic Socialist. Dr. Abdullah Saeed in Michigan doesn't identify as a Democratic Socialist. So here are all of these labels that people are arguing about online, and this thing that people are doing where they're saying, are you DSA or not, as a qualifying or disqualifying question, doesn't seem to actually capture what's happening and what people are asking for. So what do you think more established Democrats are missing when they're caught up in who belongs to the party and who doesn't, who calls themselves DSA and who doesn't?
You know, I think that when we get caught up in the labels, there are a number of things that happen. And one of them is we don't see how close together we are. So if you agree with somebody 85% of the time, what are we really actually talking about? One of my other favorite moments is there was a panel, the closing member forum I was moderating, and Congressman Clyburn and Congressman Thompson are on this panel. And Congressman Thompson, so people understand, came up in SNCC. He was mentored by Fannie Lou Hamer. He is absolutely progressive in ways that some people would be shocked to hear about members of Congress in the South being, right? So let's do the labels. Congressman Clyburn came up in NAACP. And this is the NAACP of Dr. King, you going too far, right?
Yeah.
He was conditioned under, the nonviolent movement and still protesting, went to jail for protesting, no less, but that's where he met Miss Emily. They shared a sandwich. They've been, they were lovebirds ever since, married 50-something years, right? And so, but I'm saying that to say there were two different pathways that they both took to get to the same end goal, which is freedom and liberation for Black people. Congressman Thompson and Mr. Clyburn are very close friends. And they couldn't disagree more most times on how to get to the end goal. But they always, on a final passage of a bill that's going to help us, they are locked in. What I fear is we're getting to this era, particularly because of social media echo chambers that help us to thrive in this nonsense, is everybody's got to get to the end goal the same way. Otherwise, you cancel.
Yeah.
It's bad. And it's dumb.
Yeah.
It's like, no, we actually need an inside game. We actually need an outside game. We actually need the agitators and the advocates. So that I love that about them. And they don't always agree, but they use the instruction they had, the environments where they come from, the demographics of their districts to guide how they respond.
Yeah.
And that's okay. So the point is, progress is progressivism.
Yeah. I think this is so important because the flattening that social media has done of people and their work gets people confused as to how we made the gains that we're fighting to protect now, and therefore how we study those blueprints to make even more gains. And it's easy to catch a cutoff moment of a press conference and say that person is done for me, and miss all of the other stuff that they've done, all the strategic work, all of the discipline, all of the stuff that has to happen in legislative bodies in particular, and you know this well, to make bills move. I'm really glad that you shared that moment, because it's something that a lot of people don't see. And I love our undistracted community because they're always trying to wrestle with the nuance. And that's the nuance that we don't have space for online. But I want to bring something else up about these labels. So we had our friend Nicole Hannah-Jones on, founder of the 1619 Project. We had her here on the podcast a few weeks ago, and she looks at some on the left who are trying to build a class-focused politic while staying race blind. And I think this is part of the reason why some people are like, I have progressive politics, but I ain't gonna call myself a progressive, because all the progressives I see keep saying, no, it's class, not race, silly. And then I'm sitting here as a Black woman, one of the 600,000 without a job, saying, I thought it was both and then some. She argues that it's not possible for that to be successful because it flattens the ways that some racial and ethnic groups need more and are owed more, clearly, by this country than others, and that it leaves society really vulnerable for the other side to deepen our racial divisions instead of for us to work across those lines. And she thinks that that's why we've never had a really successful solely class-based movement in this country. And I really think that that's worth sitting with, because there's a real risk right now of erasing leftists of color from the conversation, right? Frantz Fanon, Fred Hampton existed in the 60s, right? And a lot of what gets credited to Bernie Sanders, as we said, was Jesse Jackson's platform 40 years before Bernie said it. So truly left politics in this country has deep Black roots. I'm curious how you make sure that we don't flatten Black thought and leadership on the left, both as we critique a white left that wants to remain race blind and as we make sure we make real collective progress.
I think that you can't truly be progressive without color consciousness. I just think you racist. And seriously, and just upholding racist.
That's the title of the episode. I just think you racist.
Like, it's just like you like help me understand what people-centered movement erases any part of their humanity. Like, you sound like a fascist too at this point. Now I got a mayor that does this, Britt. I have a white woman mayor. I ain't even gonna hold her. They have a white woman mayor in Seattle that beat the Black man who I've known my entire life. So yeah, let's acknowledge, I'm getting just so you clear, there is a bias there. But like, I'm watching her run over Black people over and over again. She got elected under working families. Me and Mo fight about this all the time. But she got elected under a working families party banner, and I don't know how she was even able to hold that, because she's not looking out for working families, and she's not looking out for people who support a working families platform who are people of color. She fired a Black woman on maternity leave. You will be sensitive to this. 2 weeks before she gave birth.
Now you know how I feel about that.
Okay. And then you got her going after someone who was running City Light. That's not a Black woman, but she was supported by 6,000 City Light employees. I think that a lot of people hide under the banner of progressive when they have no experience. And I also think that because it's like, oh, what's the shortest way I can get to the top of a ticket, right? And so she's one of those. And everybody that says they're progressive don't deserve to be able to hold that banner. It just is what it is. And so I'm watching racist Katie do all this and cut up. And I'm watching it happen in other parts of the country. People have said that they're progressive, but when you look at their campaign teams, including Bernie, where are the black contractors, where are the black vendors, where are the black staff? You don't want to work. You don't hire black people on your team. How many black staffers has Bernie got in his Senate office? So, like, at some
It's a fair
point,
question.
we got to acknowledge your progressivism is really just liberalism because you want more space to be white. And so be white liberally, but don't call it progressive.
To be white, and to be white in a way, to your point, that dismisses people's humanity and lived experience, right?
The other one is Jill Stein. Because she gets to hold that she's progressive. Let me tell you how racist Jill Stein is. She went on this podcast with this heifer that used to be a city council member here and got recalled. I believe she got recalled. Either there was a recall effort or she got recalled. Either way, they wanted her out of here. She just ran against Adam Smith and got her block knocked off. She got beat so bad.
Yikes.
But Jill Stein went on this heifer's podcast and gonna say that I'm a black face in a high place. Why do you even feel like you can say that out your mouth?
Hold on, Jilly. Now, wait a minute. Because you need to know how to play your position. Jill, though, for me, is a reminder of what you're talking about. I wouldn't say across the board it's easier to be a progressive, but there are some people, I think, who realize it can be a fast bullet to stardom, which can mean money, coverage, etc. There's a way to ride that bullet train to progressive stardom by only spouting ideals and never having actually had to build anything, right? Certainly not build anything in coalition with anybody that's judged by outcomes for people. And that's not true of everybody, right? Which is why I think I look at Brandon and Zoran and I'm grateful because they're showing it's possible to have a progressive politic and to produce results, right? Like he said something about Zoran. I think they're using some kind of technology to pull heat from parts of the city and cool the subway stations. And the best response I saw to that thread was, that was possible the whole time. Like, people who are oriented toward results, I frankly don't care what you call yourself, progressive, liberal, leftist, democratic, socialist. I could care less as long as you stand for the right values and you are actually getting shit done for people, because the circumstances are dire, especially when we talk about working class people, but for all of us who are but a paycheck or two away from dealing with this. We've only got a few minutes left, but I want to point to your work with State of the People and the incredible team and communities that came together on that power tour and that still come together around State of the People, because it took conversations on the road to communities that have essentially been disappeared from the electoral map. Parties act like they don't exist. But there are people who are living in places where the water grids are at risk, where the power grids are very, very stressed, exactly what we're seeing in Puerto Rico right now. And in those places, you said, what are we going to do if the power grid fails? What are we going to do if you can't get on your phone or charge your car or put gas in your car to get to a safe location? What are you going to do if everything's shut down and you can't feed your family? How is visiting those places and having those conversations and simulations and preparation moments help you think about what politicians actually need to offer?
And you know what, Britt? I love that question because that is exactly the point. And I think that on the other side of this November election, the thing I neglected to say earlier is, worst case, all of the things that took place and were signed into law through H.R. 1 will come to pass. They purposely set the deadline for after the November election so Republicans would not experience the consequences of their horrific actions by voting for that bill. So we talk about Medicare cuts, Medicaid cuts, further SNAP benefit cuts. We're seeing those happen all across the country right now, especially in the South. But what has to happen in those moments is people of goodwill have to come together to meet the needs of community. Hopefully, that is led and orchestrated by our elected officials. But if it is not, we cannot sit idly by and wait for that to happen. So I would suggest that people understand, even if you need to, get Chad or one of your AI friends to tell you what was in the bill and what is going to come to pass so that you know how to meet the need. And it's whatever you feel like you're called to do. And that's the other
Yeah.
important thing. Like, we can't do everything, Britt. If I knew how to stand up a emergency response thing, I would. That's not my core competency.
Yeah.
My core competency is like, okay, who could do this? Who could do this? And then bring everybody together.
Mhm.
But I'm too scattered and ADD to be like, okay, I'm gonna sit down and meticulously put together every single aspect of this
But
thing.
that's why we call you chief of staff to the blacks, because you don't have to put it all together. You bring the people together who can do it.
Yeah, well, thank you. I don't love that title, but I clearly it's not going anywhere. But I think that the main thing, Britt, I would say right now is we continue to ask people what they need. And we continue to ask ourselves how we can meet the need. Mutual aid societies did not start even with the Black Panther Party. They started during slavery.
Right.
They were
That's
mutual
right.
aid societies that took care of everything from bereavement to insurance to food. And I think that we have to get to the point where we remember our original calling, our original mission is always to love our neighbor as ourselves. And we can't do that if we're watching somebody go hungry or watching somebody's child incarcerated and we don't do our
That's
very
right.
best to help them figure out what the next steps are. Watch somebody who's battling addiction, or watch someone who doesn't have clothes, or watch someone who's underemployed or completely unemployed. All of the,
That's
or
right.
for our kids to not be able to learn their history. All of those things matter. What Nicole, you brought up Nicole earlier, what she's built with her freedom schools, I believe that's what it's
Yeah.
called. Is it freedom school?
Yeah.
In Iowa, is teaching kids about our history where she knows they've been starved of that history in classroom. That's a form of
And that's
mutual
also
aid.
what we do at CDF Freedom Schools. That is mutual aid.
Absolutely.
Absolutely right.
Absolutely. And so it's getting back to what we know, to who we are, and to never abandoning that mission. We don't need legislation to do that. We should be doing that nonstop. And that's what I want for our people. If there was a closing ask, y'all, let's please stop moving from crisis to crisis. We know the crisis will come, and we know that we have every right to be our best selves, to teach our children, to support our elders, no matter what crisis is coming. That we should never let that break down again. That's my ask.
Yeah. Yeah. That is an important ask. Okay, before I let you go, we've talked the office of citizen, we've talked local politics. There's clearly a presidential race coming in 2028, and I have to get your thoughts on Vice President Harris. There's a real contingent of people who think that her running again would be, quote, it's not my words, it's theirs, humiliating for her and for the country. There's definitely some like keep her in her place energy behind a lot of that, especially considering that there's a field of like 80 bajillion Gavins and Joshes lining up to run, but she was actually the vice president. Where do you fall down on this?
I think I tell these people to go to hell. Like, I think, seriously, like, let her make her decision in her own
That's
time.
right.
How many times did Joe Biden run for president? Like, shut up.
A
Number one.
million.
Yeah. Like, I'm just like, shut up. Number two, the thing that I would encourage our sister to do is to deepen into her somebodiness and into who she is. Y'all have not even seen all of the layers of Kamala Devi Harris. You just
That's
haven't.
right.
She
That's right.
is so fun and so brilliant.
Yeah.
She got a clap back, but she also got compassion. You
She
know,
does.
she
Yeah.
is brilliant, and she's also bold. You know, I can keep
Yeah.
the alliteration going, but you understand what I'm saying.
And much more bold than I think, to keep the alliteration going, the Biden era showed people.
Yeah. And I think that if people get the opportunity to see who she really is, I want all of these folks to keep an open mind, because there's a lot of time between November and what happens in November and 2028. And I think the person who will have the most successful goal will not just be trying to produce an anti-Trump agenda, and you know, trying to talk about what, you know, how they're not him. They will also proactively produce an agenda to meet the needs, the desires, the demands, and to solve the harm and the hurt of the people. And whoever can do that is who's gonna, I think, be on the ticket.
Shout out to the entire spectrum of Black thought, Black leadership, Black lived experience that will be on display during that primary. Because when Black people are heard, everybody benefits. And if there's nothing else anybody learns from Undistracted, y'all definitely know that.
Yes.
Angela Rye, thank you for joining us on Undistracted. We'll definitely have you back real soon, because you got the inside scoop and we always need it.
Love you,
I
sis.
love you.
I don't
Thanks
know
for
how
coming.
inside it is. They might have kicked me out after this episode, but we'll see.
We'll take you over here if they kick you out. You can stay with
Girl,
us.
I'm already with you, girl. Hug my nephews.
I will. I love you.
Love you too.
All right, y'all. I'm joined once again by my friend and yours, our group chat regular bestie, author, and gender and women's studies professor, Dr. Brittney Coop. Coop, what's up?
What's up?
Okay, so we got a lot to talk about today. First, we need to talk about this water crisis in Puerto Rico. For those who have not been following, here's what's happening. For almost 130 days, Puerto Rico has been experiencing acute water shortages, with much of the island's population without safe or steady drinking water. So to address this, Puerto Rico is rationing water for nearly 200,000 people on a rotating schedule that leaves most people without running water for 48 hours at a time, Coop. That's 2 days. Reporting I have mercy, Jesus. Reporting describes residents as hauling jugs up apartment stairs in summer heat, record summer heat, some going over a week without water before a rationing was even formally announced. This is, of course, affecting communities in parts of San Juan and neighborhoods in Carolina Juncos, Jurabo, Loíza, and it's happening partly because of a drought. But let's be clear. It's also happening because of crumbling infrastructure. Roughly 59% of all treated water in Puerto Rico is lost before it ever even reaches residents through leaks and faulty meters, falling pipes, and more than half of the island's drinking water supply has been lost over the last 19 years. So if you're learning about this for the first time, you're probably not alone, which is very different from the coverage that might be happening if, say, this water crisis were in Denver or Sacramento or, Cedar Rapids. But just like crises in those parts of the country, Puerto Rico's crisis is an American issue. Don't forget. This country colonized the people. They're Americans, okay? And whether or not that should be is a case for Puerto Ricans to make for themselves. If they want their land back, we should give it back. But in the meantime, we are responsible for their infrastructure and their water. This requires financial approval from a U.S. governing board called the Financial Oversight and Management Board, which has reportedly held up infrastructure improvements for a whole lot of years. Coop, this is terrifying. I'm curious what your take is on what it's going to take for mainland US to finally and fully acknowledge that we cannot keep treating our Puerto Rican siblings like this little kid who needs management and then also refuse to manage the situation. Like, those two don't go together.
They do not go together. I just want to remind people of the infamous image of Donald Trump tossing paper towels.
Damn paper towels.
This is from the Hurricane Maria era from 2017. That was one of the most recent precipitating events that intensified this many decades long structural disinvestment. Yep. So we have a president who is very intent upon treating Puerto Rican people like a colony rather than the more sort of liberal gloss that tends to happen when you have more liberal politicians in office.
Hello.
So it is about inducing structural misery. And so my heart goes out to Puerto Rican folk and to their family members who are here on the mainland, who I know are deeply worried about them.
Yeah.
And I also want to note for people that this is already happening they're doing a miniature version of it in the US. So this is when the president weaponizes FEMA and refuses to approve disaster relief funding in states that didn't vote for him or in communities that didn't vote for him, right? Also, let's not forget that there are still Black communities around the country that exist in a veritable water crisis.
Flint
still has challenges with water. Newark still has challenges with water. And one of the things we're seeing in a place like Newark, where there are immigrants dying in detention in Delaney Hall, detention facility there, all of this is related not only to a kind of structural callousness that's about disregarding people of color, it is also about a refusal to acknowledge climate change and recognize. So, you get that over against, for example, everyone's beloved Mayor Zorwan Mandani saying, earlier, yesterday, we're going to, capture the heat in the subway stations and use it to power the buildings in winter. So there are other options.
There are options, people,
that we could be innovating, that we could be using this as an invitation to have a better response to climate change. But look,
But you
people,
got to acknowledge climate change is happening
I mean,
first.
exactly. And the other thing that I worry about, I worry that Puerto Rico is not different for the president than Gaza, which is to say, I
Mm.
worry that part of what his desire is simply to starve these people, to kill
Yeah.
to induce the kind of misery that is unlivable. Let me be very
Yep.
particular in how I say it. So
Yep.
that then what you have is just beautiful island territory
Nice
that can be
waterfront
snapped up.
property.
That's right.
Hmm.
It's disaster capitalism, as Naomi Klein called it. And
Hmm.
I think that he's just doing a slower version of it because it's an American territory, but it seems that that's his, maybe his ultimate kind of play.
I definitely would not put that past him, or, to be clear, the oligarchs who control him.
Come
Because
on.
it was his son-in-law, I believe, who was the one who said Gaza would make nice waterfront property. And I'm sure that for the guy who thinks he's a real estate tycoon, even though he keeps going bankrupt, he would love to open Trump Hotel and Plaza Gaza, Trump Hotel and Plaza San Juan.
One.
That is why you don't see the kind of infrastructural investments that Puerto Rico has needed for 2 decades, right? It's not like this water crisis is new. This is
Right.
just the latest manifestation of it. When you're
Yeah.
talking about an island losing half of its water supply in under 20 years, that is a choice. That is a choice of budgets. That is a choice of power hoarding. That is a choice of people who would rather keep money in their pockets than serve people. Our indigenous siblings say water is life, right? That's what they remind us of all the time when they are out there stopping pipelines with their own bodies. Water is life. This is a free resource. And it
Yeah.
got commodified by the people who bottle it, by the folks who trade it, by the folks who control the waterways. And
Yeah.
in doing so, we put
Yeah.
people's fates in the hands of folks whose only interest is their own bottom line. And this is part of the reason why I am so glad that your friend and mine, one Bad Bunny, did not speak a lick of
Come
English
on, talk
during
about it.
that Super Bowl
That's
halftime
right.
performance,
That's right.
because he needed to remind us with that cultural moment that the people deserve to control their own fates. And I was over there shaking my ass whether I understood it or not,
It
okay?
was it was epic and low
It was
key.
epic.
This treatment of Puerto Rico is likely, this refusal to then address this crisis is probably retaliatory, because
Hello.
this is an administration that governs based on grievance. And I also want to say, let us not forget that no neighboring Cuba is also going through a similar kind of crisis, not
That's
water,
right.
but oil. And
That's
at
right.
some point, we have to ask what these very black and brown countries in the ocean, just full of people who are melanated and look like us,
Hmm.
and who keep being, subjected to structural
Hmm.
privation, right? What that is about. And so much of it is just simply about the US wanting to
That's
impose
right.
its total domination on these
That's
folks.
right. That's right. And we cannot keep exporting these people's culture
Come
and
on. And
investing
then
in
don't
their
even want to
lives.
feed them and give them water,
Now,
like, and
come
make
on,
sure they
because you're
have
going to eat the
water.
mofongo, but you're going to let the Puerto Ricans go hungry and thirsty? I got a problem with that. I got a
I
problem with that.
agree with you.
I also want to shout out the Meteors newsletter because they published a fantastic explainer this week, or last week rather, called 122 Days Living Without Water, that I think everybody should read, especially because that story includes a number of links to organizations that are helpful in supporting and fighting this crisis. So, Coop, next up, there's news coming out of the military,
Mm,
and Yao Defense Secretary Pete
mm,
Hegseth, who
mm.
reportedly is personally intervening to cancel the planned promotion of specific officers who disproportionately happen to be women and or black. I know, it must be a coincidence. Pete must not be doing that on purpose at all. Wink, wink. These are people whose promotions were already approved by the relevant service promotion boards. His interference seems to be framing that these promotions are undeserving DEI hires, that they didn't earn it. And while I know that some tend to callously cast aside anything that has to do with the military as less than important because of the atrocities absolutely committed by the nature of their work and our complete and utter disgust with the military industrial complex in America and in the West. Like, is this really a field where we want to achieve? But it's important to acknowledge that there are women in the Army, that there are Black folks in the Army, that there are people of color in the armed services. And having more women and more people of color in higher ranking positions in the military also helps prevent atrocities and creates more opportunities for the military to use its resources to aid humanitarian crises. So I don't think we can just dismiss this out of hand. Coop, talk to me about this. How do we care? Do we care about military advancement, and why do you think it's important? Is it important to have more women and Black folks in positions of power and service?
Look, we don't have to agree with every industry a person works in to say that Black people and Black women deserve the set of possibilities that are available to them. And
Yeah.
we also have a limited historical understanding. If most of us look back even one generation in our families, somebody went into the military. And they didn't do it because they believed
Hello.
in the American war machine. They did it because they didn't have the opportunity to pay for college or to see the planet, to see the world in any other kind of way. The military heavily recruited in our communities. There was just one generation ago, our uncles, my father served in the military, my
Yeah.
grandfather fought in World War II, both grandfathers fought in World War II.
Yeah.
Right now, my dad, because he was a bit of a rascal, was dishonorably discharged because one day he got bored and he just walked on home. He just decided he was tired of
I
being
don't
there.
blame him.
And so I
AWOL.
support this, right? But I am saying to our communities, I just was having this conversation, and early in my career, I did some organizing with a good friend named Anuradha Bhagwati,
Hmm.
who helped to found the Sexual Assault Survivors Network for military professionals. There are
Mm.
extreme degrees of sexual assault of women, of queer
Yes.
folks, of people of color in the
Yes.
military. We have to care about that. And my Black feminist stance is I care about Black women wherever they are.
Wherever they
And
are.
so if you're in the middle of that war machine, but there was, I didn't get a chance to go this year, but there was a panel at this gathering that happens in Martha's Vineyard of
Hmm.
theologians. And
Hmm.
one of the women who attended the panel talked about um, needing to get approval from senior officers for the day and time of her fibroid surgery.
Mm.
Like male officers calling her
Mm.
doctors and scheduling her fibroid surgery,
Excuse me?
interacting with her doctors, right?
Mm.
Wild
Mm-mm.
shit. So I'm
Mm-mm.
saying that we have to care about what's going on in the military
That's
because we
right.
live in a country that where with a government that in this moment idolizes the military, wants to
Mhm.
enact militarist ideas for our everyday lives,
Yeah.
and wants this level of control over our bodies. But our job is not always, look, we don't have to agree to say you deserve conditions that are safe, that are
That's right.
non-exploitative. You need to be able to advocate for yourself. And low key, many of us are here because our folks made the sacrifice to go into
Yeah.
the military when they didn't have other options. And
Yeah.
that was the way that generations of Black folks had, middle class possibility.
That's right. As long as the armed services continue to intentionally target and recruit poor folks, Black folks, immigrants, people who are trying to find a way out and through and over and under, then we have to care about what happens to them. And
That's
I
right.
especially want to talk to my beloved fellow progressives and folks on the left who want to center ourselves so much exclusively in systems that we forget about the cost to human beings. So, yes, we can talk about how problematic the military industrial complex is all day, and we should. We should have that conversation. And there are human beings there. There are trans human beings there. There are queer human beings there. There are women there. There are Black folks there. There are people of color there who, again, were intentionally targeted to sacrifice themselves for this country with the promise of some little tiny piece of the American dream. The houselessness crisis, the mental health crisis, the healthcare crisis among veterans is staggering. And for a country that claims to care about the patriotic, the folks who took up arms for this country are some of the worst treated. If that is not our problem, then we need to start over, right? Like we have completely lost the plot. Like
Yeah.
you, my grandfather was a veteran. And I recognize that the military in America has not only been weaponized abroad, abroad, it has been weaponized domestically because sending Black men off to war with the promise of access to generational wealth, and when they came home, they were denied because they didn't get that GI Bill, where they got some of the money but couldn't buy a house in that neighborhood where there was a restrictive covenant, or they came home with so many needs that weren't serviced at these segregated hospitals. Y'all, the military is harming people at home too. And it uses itself as a model for whatever it wants to dictate to the rest of the country. So we have to remember some of the very first attacks on trans people under this administration were in the military. Yes. Some of the very first attacks on women in the military. Some of the very first attacks on Black people and Black leadership, so-called DEI leadership, were about Black folks who were leading in the military. So like, yeah, Pete is a punk. Maybe that's the title of the episode. Pete is a punk. I want to roll my eyes every time somebody brings up his name. However, we've got our fellow human beings in those spaces that he controls, and we have to care.
I am staunchly anti-militarist. I have been forever. I have lived through the violence of having a father come back from the military and having men in my community do extreme violence to me and my folks because of PTSD that they suffered during military service. So what I'm talking about is not theoretical. And at the same time, Black women in particular deserve to have their brilliance in every place that they are.
If everybody's not well, then none of us are well, which brings me to the WNBA.
Oh my goodness.
So let's talk sports. There's a whole lot to talk about in the W. But at the center of, let's say, several growing controversies, but especially one growing controversy over transgender athlete eligibility, Indiana Fever guard Sophie Cunningham, no relation, I want to be clear, publicly opposed trans women competing in women's sports last month, even though the league doesn't actually have any trans players currently that we know of. So I don't even know why she's talking about it. But then the debate escalated pretty dramatically, I would say, when two former NBA players, Inez Cantor-Freedom and Royce White, both declared themselves eligible for the 2027 WNBA draft, saying they identify as women, basically as a veiled threat to the WNBA to clarify their eligibility rules or, make fun of the entire situation. So it looks like all of this has sparked a task force and a team of team presidents and general managers to consider the eligibility question in the coming days. But this is wild to me, Coop, for a couple of reasons, not the least of which is that it seems that anything that bubbles up right now around the WNBA, unfortunately, is being influenced by new fans and new players who want to use this as a political proxy for some really evil things. And I'm curious, not even just why the W has become a proxy for a culture war right now, because sports have always been a proxy for our most intractable issues in this country. But I'm really curious as to why the NASCAR crowd decided that they wanted to come over to the W, because that's a league that was built by and run by Black women. Sophie can't even put no points on the board. Don't you want to be known for basketball and not your foul mouth?
Apparently not. Not when you're mediocre and there's no attention seeking, then it turns out that just saying racist, sexist, transphobic shit will get you very far. Listen, we are, I keep saying this because we have to keep saying it. We are also in a moment of the rapid return of patriarchy, and men are very bothered at all of the shine and the excitement around this last couple of years of WNBA players. They feel like they are supposed to regulate every part of women's lives, our athletics, in particular, our bodies, our reproduction. And they use this idea of safety and protection. Now, these are people who routinely overlook rape culture, who routinely overlook their problematic homeboys in athleticism.
Let's be clear. One of these NBA players who has decided to declare himself eligible has been credibly accused of child and spousal abuse. You need to go talk to that lady before you end up in jail, not the draft.
Come on, because the reality is that most male predators are not there. It's not trans men, it's not trans people. It's just good old straight identified cisgender dudes who are doing the predation, right?
Mm.
And so the
And they're
idea,
proving our point right now.
I mean, correct. You want to come over and be in folks' business and look, but it's not separate from the desire to regulate women's bodies in
Yeah.
childbirth, the desire to regulate women's bodies and determine their sex and their gender. And mostly, I want to say, like, stay out of our business. This has nothing to do with you. But the WNBA has been, particularly here in this last era, this last moment, very progressive about politics, very progressive about,
Extremely.
and really radically platform and talking about, Nolan Wells and, other sorts of
Yes.
issues. And so this is a desire to silence, to usurp control. But these folks do not, and look, and I also want to say as a Black feminist that I am bothered by white girls who want to invoke this white femininity standard, the same femininity standard that has made it impossible for women to get paid the kind of money that they should in the
There it
WNBA
is.
because they have been seen as being less athletic and the weaker
There it
sex
is.
and not credible athletes. And now you want to invoke it so that you can get all these dudes running over here talking about we got to protect our delicate white female flowers.
Hello.
And low key, that narrative is an invocation of violence. In prior generations, it got Black men lynched, and now they want to weaponize that same kind of logic in order to come after trans women. We do not get to do violence to trans people so that white folks can sort of have an internal mind meld around their racist patriarchal domination of everybody else. No,
listen. In a world where Paige Beckers exists,
come on,
you don't have to be a Sophie Cunningham.
You do not.
Like, I actually think that, like, there's something so beautiful about what has happened with the WNBA as it has blossomed and sprouted, as the CBA agreement increased player pay, as the attention and the televising of these games expanded, as the finals have been watched more and more, as All-Star Weekend has been watched and attended more and more. There's something so beautiful about the fact that we can get out there and say everybody watches women's sports, and the W is helping to prove it. I actually think it's incredible that sports can be this unifying space where you find yourself sitting in the stands next to somebody that you never would have met otherwise, but y'all just love the way that homegirl puts up a three-pointer. You just love the way that Dejanay enforces, right? You just like, there are so many things that pull us into this space of women's sports and the WNBA. And there are women who painstakingly built this, who are now having to watch what they built be shadowed and shrouded by somebody who wants, as my friend Jamel Hill said, to extend her 15 minutes of fame into 20. And as I'll add, because she's not that great on the court, so she's got to figure out a way to be a way to be prominent off the court, right? Yeah. And like, I'm not even one of those people who's like, just stick to sports, blah, blah, blah. I love that the W has been a place of powerful activism and organizing, that those women over so many years have been using their platform for everything from queer rights to Black Lives Matter and so many things, and women's equal pay and so many things in between. And I think it is deeply insulting that there are folks who have come around for the first time ever and decided that this was going to be where they laid out all of their grievances with the rest of us for daring to build something that beautiful, daring to build something that invited them in the first place, daring to build something that said, I can love Diana Taurasi and Sue Bird just like I love Cheryl Miller and Angel Reese, right? That like, that is a place of beauty. And if you would accept the invitation with the respect that it deserves, you can have fun here. You can kick it here. You can enjoy it here. You can raise powerful little daughters here. You can raise strong sons who aren't threatened by powerful women. I love taking our sons to WNBA games. I want him to see women's sports and to see women as his equals and to admire women and respect women and look up to them, because those are some bad ballers on the court.
Come on.
So if you can't come in here and respect the house that was built, then you can kindly exit to the left. Like, you actually don't get to act like this in somebody else's house. Somebody opened up the door for you, poured you some sweet tea or some lemonade, put you a plate in the microwave or the oven and said, hey, come on, sit down, have a seat, and have some of this joy with me. And you don't treat people like that when they invite you in their house.
Come on.
So in a world full of Paiges, be Paige, not Sophie, who's good at the game and also good with her sisters. All right. That has been our untrending news for this week. Coop, as always, I appreciate your brilliance and I appreciate you for always keeping it real in the group chat. We'll see you real soon.
My pleasure.
Look, like Angela said, sometimes you got to tell them people to go to hell. And sometimes you got to fill a pothole. Brandon Scott, Zoran Mondani, hopefully Janice Lewis-George. These are some folks who are reminding us that politics is personal and it's deeply local. We have to recognize that no matter what position we are electing people to, that they owe us something. And it's our job in the office of citizen to hold them accountable to it. So politicians, whatever you're running for, make sure you are listening to the people because they'll tell you what they want. And if you don't give it to them, there's going to be hell to pay. You don't want them to tell you to go to hell. You want them to tell you, hey, the pothole needs filling. And then you got to show up and do it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being. And most importantly, thanks for doing. I'm Brittany Packnett Cunningham. Let's go get free.